Darius Coleman wasn't a man who sought attention. In fact, he went out of his way to avoid it. He worked from home, kept his yard neatly trimmed, and only spoke to his neighbors when absolutely necessary. Most of the people in his quiet neighborhood left him alone, and that suited him just fine. It was a life of solitude, routine, and minimal interaction. But one small decision on a seemingly ordinary Thursday afternoon would disrupt that peace and set off a chain of events that would put him under the watchful eye of not only his neighbors, but the entire police force. It all began on that Thursday. After Darius had wrapped up a long morning of work, he decided to take a break and check his internet speed. Lately, his Wi-Fi had been acting up. Video calls would buffer endlessly, and streaming music was a constant exercise in frustration. At first, he chalked it up to his internet provider, assuming it was a temporary glitch. But the more he thought about it, the more something didn't sit right. He decided to dig a little deeper. Darius opened up the router settings on his phone, hoping to get to the bottom of the issue. That's when he noticed something strange. A device was connected to his Wi-Fi network that he didn't recognize. It wasn't a random jumble of numbers and letters like most devices show up as. It had a name, Crestwood ISO 1. This raised a red flag for Darius. He lived alone. His phone, laptop, and TV were the only devices connected to his network. He never shared his Wi-Fi password with anyone, so who was using his internet? Feeling annoyed and a bit uneasy, Darius decided to take action. He kicked the unknown device off the network and reset the Wi-Fi password, hoping that would solve the issue. But before he could relax, he stepped outside for better reception and leaned against the side of his house while typing in the new password. Little did he know, across the street, Melanie Foster was watching him from her kitchen window. She had seen him before. Darius was the kind of neighbor who kept to himself, never really mingling with anyone. He didn't come to block parties, never made small talk, and rarely interacted with the community. For Melanie, there was something off about him, even though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. And now, here he was, standing outside, absorbed in his phone. Her imagination began to run wild. She thought she saw him behaving suspiciously. In her mind, it looked like he was doing something wrong, something illegal. Maybe he was hacking or tampering with something he shouldn't be. She didn't know what he was up to, but it didn't feel right. Instead of dismissing the thought, she grabbed her phone in a panic and dialed 911. "I need to report something suspicious," she said urgently, her voice trembling slightly. "My neighbor, he's outside doing something with his phone. I don't know exactly what it is, but it looks weird. Can you send someone to check it out?" The dispatcher on the other end asked a few clarifying questions, but Melanie didn't have much to offer. All she had were suspicions and gut feelings. She kept repeating the same thing. "He's up to something. I just know it." Within moments, the police were on their way, while Darius remained unaware that his afternoon was about to spiral into a full-blown investigation. He hadn't done anything wrong, but his seemingly innocent decision to change his Wi-Fi password was about to lead to a chain reaction that would turn his quiet neighborhood upside down. What neither Darius nor Melanie knew was that the real danger wasn't coming from him at all. As Darius finished updating his Wi-Fi password, he heard the distant sound of sirens. At first, he didn't think much of it. Maybe the police were responding to an emergency elsewhere. But then, as the sirens grew louder, he saw a squad car pull up slowly in front of his house. The car stopped, and two officers got out. One was a tall, broad-shouldered man with sharp features, Detective Louis Navarro. His partner, Officer Belle Carter, was shorter but carried herself with a quiet yet firm authority. Darius felt his heart rate pick up. He didn't move from his spot, but stood there, waiting for the officers to approach. Navarro's hand rested near his belt, not quite on his gun, but close enough that Darius could read the unspoken message. This could escalate quickly. "Sir," Navarro called out in a steady voice, "we got a call about suspicious activity. Can you tell us what you're doing?" Darius frowned, his mind racing. Suspicious activity? He was standing in his own driveway, trying to fix a simple problem with his internet connection. He took a slow breath, making sure to keep his composure. He knew how easily these situations could escalate. "I'm changing my Wi-Fi password," he said, his tone calm but confused. Navarro exchanged a quick look with Officer Carter, and Darius could tell they were trying to make sense of the situation. The last thing he wanted was to give the wrong impression. He knew how these things worked. One wrong move, and suddenly, you were the one under suspicion. "Do you live here?" Navarro asked, his eyes narrowing slightly. Darius almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. His car was in the driveway. His name was on the mailbox. He was the only person who lived in the house. "Yeah," he said, his arms crossed now, the hint of frustration creeping into his voice. "What kind of question is that?" The officers exchanged another glance. It wasn't clear whether they thought he was being evasive or whether they were simply doing their job, but Darius could feel the tension rising. He knew the situation could go sideways at any moment, and he tried to keep his voice steady, doing his best to stay calm under pressure. What Darius didn't realize was that the whole situation had nothing to do with him or his Wi-Fi password. Melanie's call had set in motion something that neither of them could have predicted. In the end, Darius wasn't the one who had caused the real disturbance. It was the hidden danger lurking right under their noses, something far more disturbing than any Wi-Fi issue. Darius Coleman had lived in his quiet neighborhood for 3 years without incident. He didn't ask for attention, didn't go to block parties, and preferred the solace of his own home. But when a simple Wi-Fi password change turned into an ordeal, he was about to realize that his peaceful life was about to be shattered. It all started when Darius noticed his internet was slower than usual. Video calls lagged, and streaming music was a frustrating experience. Thinking it was just an issue with his provider, he dug into his router settings to check the problem. That's when he found it, an unknown device connected to his Wi-Fi network, labeled Crestwood ISO 1. He didn't recognize it. There was only him, his phone, his laptop, and his TV connected to the network. His instinct told him someone was using his internet without permission. Annoyed, he kicked the device off his network and changed his password. While standing outside his house, tapping away at his phone to update the credentials, he had no idea that his every move was being observed from across the street. Melanie Foster, a neighbor who'd never fully trusted him, was watching him from her kitchen window. He had always kept to himself, never participating in neighborhood events, and now here he was, outside, seeming to mess with something on his phone. Melanie's suspicions flared. To her, it looked like Darius was doing something suspicious. She had no concrete evidence, but her gut told her something was off. Was he hacking? She didn't know, but the sight of him standing there so absorbed in his phone made her uneasy. She picked up the phone and dialed 911. "I need to report something suspicious," she said with urgency. "My neighbor, he's outside doing something with his phone. I don't know what it is, but it looks weird. Can you send someone to check it out?" The dispatcher didn't get much from her, but the officers were on their way. Meanwhile, Darius was unaware that his quiet afternoon was about to take a dramatic turn. He wasn't the one doing anything wrong, but his life was about to be put under a microscope. When the sirens blared in the distance, Darius barely registered them. He assumed they were responding to another call, but when he saw a squad car slow down and stop in front of his house, his heart rate quickened. 2 officers emerged, Detective Louis Navarro, tall and broad-shouldered, and Officer Bell Carter, who had a quiet yet commanding presence. Darius tensed, but stayed rooted in his spot, knowing that the situation could quickly spiral out of control if he wasn't careful. Navarro spoke first, his tone even. "Sir, we received a call about suspicious activity. Can you tell us what you're doing?" Darius was taken aback. Suspicious activity? He was standing in his own driveway. "I'm changing my Wi-Fi password," he said, his voice calm, though confused. Navarro exchanged a glance with Officer Carter, before asking, "Do you live here?" Darius almost laughed. What kind of question was that? He was standing in his own driveway, his car in plain view, his name on the mailbox. "Yeah," he replied, crossing his arms. Before Navarro could respond, Melanie's voice pierced through the tension. "He's lying," she said from her porch, arms folded, her eyes never leaving Darius. "He's always outside doing something weird. He was messing with his phone, looking around like he was watching people, and now he's standing there for 10 minutes, just tapping away." Darius couldn't believe it. He wasn't doing anything strange, but here she was, accusing him of something he hadn't done. "I was on my router settings," he said flatly, trying to keep his cool. "Someone I don't know has been using my Wi-Fi." Melanie scoffed. "Oh, sure? And I'm supposed to believe that?" Navarro turned to her, his patience wearing thin. "Ma'am, do you have any evidence that Mr. Coleman has done something illegal?" Melanie hesitated, the reality sinking in. Of course, she had no evidence, just a gut feeling. I don't know," she admitted reluctantly. "I just think you should check." Navarro exhaled slowly, clearly losing his patience. He turned back to Darius. "Sir, would you mind if we take a quick look at your router settings to clear this up?" Darius clenched his jaw. He shouldn't have to prove anything, but he could feel how quickly things could escalate. He unlocked his phone and pulled up the router settings. "Fine," he muttered, offering the phone to the officers. Navarro leaned in, scanning the list of connected devices. His expression changed when he spotted the name Crestwood I-01. "Who owns that device?" he asked. Darius shook his head. "Not me." Officer Carter stepped forward, her eyebrows furrowed. "So someone's been using your Wi-Fi without permission?" Darius nodded. "And I don't think they're just stealing internet. Look at the connection logs. It's been running non-stop. Someone's been watching." Navarro's posture shifted. This wasn't just a petty neighborhood dispute anymore. Melanie, still standing on her porch, suddenly felt uncomfortable. "Wait, what do you mean watching?" Darius turned to her, his eyes cold. "I mean someone has been spying on us. They've been watching everything. And the real question is, who?" A heavy silence settled over the front yard as Darius's words sank in. Melanie, who had been so certain she was in the right, suddenly seemed uneasy. The thought of someone spying on them sent a chill down her spine. Navarro straightened up. "All right," he said, his voice now serious. "Let's get inside. I want to see exactly what we're dealing with." Darius didn't argue. He led the officers into his house, frustration simmering beneath the surface. He hadn't done anything wrong, but here he was, being treated like a suspect in his own home. Melanie hesitated before following. She wasn't sure why, but something told her she needed to hear this. Inside, Darius placed his phone on the dining table and mirrored the router settings onto his laptop screen. The list of connected devices appeared again. There it was. Crestwood I-01. Still connected. Still active. Officer Carter leaned in, scanning the details. "Can you see what kind of device this is?" Darius clicked through the settings quickly. "I can't tell exactly," he said, his fingers moving fast. He opened the activity logs, and then he froze. Navarro noticed the shift in Darius's face. "What is it?" Darius's throat went dry as he read the logs. "It's been accessing camera feeds." The room went dead quiet. Melanie blinked, confused. I don't understand. What camera feeds?" Darius hesitated, then turned the laptop around to show her the screen. "My home security cameras," he said coldly. "Someone's been logging in and watching my live feeds." Officer Carter's expression tightened. "You're saying someone's been spying on you through your own security system?" Darius exhaled sharply. "That's exactly what I'm saying." But then his stomach dropped. The more he scrolled through the logs, the worse it got. It wasn't just his cameras. His system had flagged multiple IP addresses, some from his network, but others from different homes. "This is bad," Darius murmured. Navarro leaned closer, his tone now urgent. "What do you mean?" Darius tapped the screen. "Whoever this is, they're not just watching me. They're watching other people in the neighborhood." Melanie took a step back, shaking her head in disbelief. No, that can't be right." Darius turned to her, his voice icy. "Are you sure about that?" Darius clicked another log on the laptop, and a new feed opened up on the screen. It was a dimly lit hallway, then a living room, and finally a bedroom. His breath caught in his throat, and he didn't even need to ask what he was seeing. He recognized it immediately. It was her house. Melanie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as she stumbled backward, horrified. Darius's heart raced as he watched her reaction, but his mind was working at full speed. Navarro's voice cut through the tension, sharp and demanding. "How the hell is this happening?" Darius gritted his teeth, his frustration boiling over. "If I had to guess, someone in the neighborhood set up a fake Wi-Fi network, a signal that looks normal. People unknowingly connect to it, and once they do, their devices get compromised." Carter's face darkened with realization. "You mean a man-in-the-middle attack?" Darius nodded, his jaw tight. "Exactly." Melanie's voice was barely a whisper, shaking with disbelief. "So you're saying someone's been watching me? My family?" Darius's eyes never left hers. "That's exactly what I'm saying." Melanie sank into a chair, her hands trembling in her lap. "Oh my God." Navarro's jaw tightened, and he was already springing into action. "All right, we need to figure out who's behind this, and fast." But what none of them knew was that the person responsible was a lot closer than they thought. Detective Navarro didn't waste any time. He pulled out his radio and called for cybercrime support. "This is bigger than we thought," he muttered to Officer Carter. "If someone's running a surveillance network, they're not just invading privacy, they're committing a felony." Carter nodded, her expression serious. "And if we don't stop them now, who knows how far they've already gone?" Darius, still sitting at his laptop, was already digging deeper. He wasn't a hacker, but he knew enough about network security to try and trace where the data was going. He opened the IP logs, and then froze. "Wait, this can't be right." Navarro looked up, his interest piqued. "What is it?" Darius turned the laptop screen so they could see. "The data isn't going to some random server. It's being sent to an address right here in the neighborhood." Melanie's eyes widened. "You mean someone close by is behind this?" Darius nodded grimly. "It's coming from a house just a few doors down." Navarro's expression darkened. "Can you pinpoint exactly which one?" Darius worked fast, cross-referencing the connection timestamps with signal strength. Within minutes, he had a match. His stomach dropped as he recognized the address. Melanie, too, knew that address all too well. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "That can't be right." Darius's voice was cold as he cut her off. "That's Brandon's house." "Brandon?" Melanie's voice cracked. "Brandon Foster?" Her nephew, a 22-year-old college student who had moved in with her a few months ago. He was quiet, always on his computer, barely socialized. Now, suddenly, everything was starting to make sense. Melanie's face went pale. No, that doesn't make any sense. Brandon isn't... He wouldn't... Officer Carter stepped forward. "We need to talk to him. Now." Melanie hesitated, her mind racing. She didn't want to believe it, but deep down, something told her that the truth was staring her right in the face. "I'll take you to him," she murmured, her voice trembling. Darius stood, his frustration rising. "I'm coming too." Navarro gave him a sharp look. "No, you stay here. Let us handle this." Darius clenched his jaw, frustrated. He hated sitting back when he was the one who uncovered everything, but he knew pushing back wouldn't help. "Fine," he muttered, "but you'd better get the truth out of him." The truth, however, turned out to be worse than anyone could have imagined. Melanie's hands were shaking as she led Navarro and Carter down the street toward her house. Every step felt heavier than the last. Brandon, the young man she had taken in, the one she had helped through school, it couldn't be him. And yet, deep down, a voice in her head whispered, "What if it is?" She opened the front door, calling out, "Brandon, can you come downstairs for a minute?" There was no answer. Navarro exchanged a glance with Carter before stepping inside. "We're going up." Melanie didn't argue. She wrapped her arms around herself, her breath unsteady, and followed them up the stairs. They reached Brandon's bedroom door, which was shut. There was no sound coming from inside. Navarro knocked hard. "Brandon, this is the police. We need to talk." Still nothing. Then the sound of movement. Furniture scraping, footsteps. Carter's hand hovered over her gun. "Open the door. Now." Slowly, the knob turned, and the door creaked open, revealing Brandon standing inside, his face pale and expression unreadable. Brandon Foster looked startled, his nerves betraying him as his eyes darted between Detective Navarro, Officer Carter, and his aunt, Melanie. His hands fidgeted at his sides, betraying his anxiety. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tight and strained. Navarro studied him closely. "We have reason to believe you've been accessing private security cameras in the neighborhood. You want to explain that?" Brandon's face barely flinched, but his fingers curled slightly, as if gripping something invisible. "What? That's crazy," he scoffed, his tone defensive. "I don't know what you're talking about." Carter wasn't buying his reaction. "Mind if we check your laptop?" Brandon's jaw tightened. "You don't have a warrant." Navarro stepped closer, his voice lowering but firm. "Brandon, we can get one. But right now, we're giving you a chance to tell us the truth before this gets worse." A long, tense beat passed. Finally, Brandon exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I wasn't doing anything illegal, okay? Navarro cut him off. "Then why is your IP address linked to a network breach involving multiple homes?" Brandon froze. Melanie's voice cracked, her heart sinking. "Brandon, please tell me you're not involved in this." Brandon's eyes darted to her, and for the first time, his mask cracked. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. "It started as a joke. I just wanted to see if I could get into someone's Wi-Fi, just to mess with them." Navarro's voice turned sharp, cutting through the air like a knife. "So you admit you hacked into the network?" Brandon hesitated, his guilt now palpable. Then, he nodded. Melanie's breath caught in her throat. Brandon's voice started to rush out, faster now, as if trying to explain away the gravity of his actions. "It was just supposed to be a prank, but then I saw the security cameras, and I got curious." Carter's eyes narrowed. Curious or obsessed? Brandon didn't answer. Navarro's patience ran out. "How many people have you watched?" There was silence, thick with tension. Then Brandon's voice dropped. "I don't know." Melanie staggered back, her legs almost giving way beneath her. "Oh my God," she whispered, horrified. Brandon looked at her for the first time with real regret crossing his face. "I swear I wasn't hurting anyone," he said, his voice cracking. Navarro didn't let him finish. "Brandon Foster, you're under arrest for unauthorized access of a computer network and unlawful surveillance." Brandon went pale. "Wait, no." Carter was already pulling out her cuffs. Melanie turned away, covering her face as tears welled in her eyes. Darius had been right all along. The worst part, she had called the cops on him when the real danger had been inside her house the entire time. But this wasn't over yet. Brandon didn't resist. He stood there, wrists bound in cuffs, staring at the floor as Navarro read him his rights. It was over. Melanie's breath was shaky. She couldn't even look at him. This was her nephew, the boy she had taken in, the one she had fed, supported, and helped through school. And now He had been violating the privacy of their entire neighborhood. Navarro guided Brandon toward the door, but before stepping out, he turned to Darius, who had been watching from the sidewalk. "You were right," Navarro admitted. "If you hadn't caught this, we might have never known." Darius didn't say anything at first. He just let out a slow breath, looking between Brandon and Melanie. Then, finally, he spoke, his voice calm, but with an unmistakable weight behind it. "You know what's crazy?" he asked, shaking his head. "I was out here minding my business, changing my own Wi-Fi password, and yet somehow I was the one who got the cops called on me." Melanie flinched. She had no defense. There was none. I was wrong," she murmured, her voice soft with regret. "I made an assumption, and it was completely unfair." Darius let that sit in the air for a moment before shaking his head again. "I don't need an apology," he said over his shoulder, turning toward his house. "Just do better." And with that, he walked inside, leaving Melanie standing alone in the middle of the street. The truth had been right in front of her all along, but she had been too busy looking at the wrong person, and that mistake, she realized, would haunt her for a long, long time. Assumptions have consequences. Jumping to conclusions based on bias or paranoia can ruin innocent people's lives while the real danger goes unchecked. Instead of making judgments without evidence, take a step back, observe, listen. The truth might not be what you expect. If you found this story eye-opening, share it. You never know who might need to hear this lesson today.